nothing can put a marketer to sleep than talking about customer research. But it is one of the most impactful and career-changing activities that I've seen in my own career. And Claire Suellentrop, she is the author of this must-read book, Forget the Funnel. She agrees.
It's one of the things that makes this customer research so valuable. It enables teams, whether product or marketing, to get a sense of where the market really is and how their market really thinks, and then look at their product through that lens rather than looking at it through their own internal lens where everyone knows that it's awesome.
In this Marketing Powerups episode, first you learn how customer research has increased Autobooks sign-up rate by 64%. Second, Claire's top questions to ask your customers to gain actionable insights. Third, when do you do surveys over user interviews? And number 4, why being a good person has accelerated Claire's career. And before we get started, I created a free Powerups cheat sheet that you can download, fill in, and apply Claire's customer research process right now. You can find that link in the show notes and description. It's at marketingpowerups.com. Are you ready? Let's get started. That's not right. Are you ready? Let's go.
Marketing Powerups. Ready? Go! Here's your host, Ramli John.
Let's talk about Marketing Powerups. I'm super excited. Y'all just released this book. It's right here. For anybody tuning in, I'm super excited. This is like a must-have book for any marketers. I'm super excited to finally have this. I feel like I wish I had this when I started marketing, because it would have like saved me a ton of like stress and like heartaches. Is that the thing? How do you feel? How's this is now out? You must be celebrating. Like how do you feel about the whole? It's out. Yes.
Honestly, and I'm sure you can relate to this, it feels kind of surreal that it's no longer like in Gia's and heads collectively. And it's really cool to like get on calls with people who've read it and they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Cool. Like, the fact that it's kind of like the fact that the framework is kind of filtering out into the world is amazing. And also it is very humbling to hear you say, this is the book you wish you had a long time ago. We've gotten that feedback from a number of marketers who are like, I knew that like, learning from customers is important. I knew that not just picking tactic random is important, but this like kind of threads all of those loose ends together, and I can just like follow a system now instead of trying to make it up.
Yeah, true. Because it's such a like a what is this called, like a fortune cookie tweet. Like talk to your customers. You will say what, but like nobody really goes deep into like what does that mean? How do you do it? Like how do you categorize it? How do you actually pull out the insights? And I feel like that's where this book fills in that details that people love to tweet or create memes or post on LinkedIn. Like your marketing is not good if you don't talk to customers. But like, what do you even mean by that? Because if you talk to customers wrong, it might be worse.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring that up. There's a company that I have been chatting with recently. And they've said like, we've learned from our customers. Like we've run customer interviews, but it's still not like it's not working. And so I asked if I could listen to some of the interview recordings, and I'm listening to them, and the team is super well intentioned, but the way that the interviews are run are very much, like feature focused. Like, hey, did you know that we have this? We're able to find this feature, or like, they're not focusing on the right parts of the customer journey. And so of course they're struggling to make good decisions from those. How to do it is not often covered. And I'm glad to hear that like you found the nitty gritty helpful.
I love that. I usually ask like a case study at the end, like of a framework, but I feel like people have heard of customer research just takes so much time. It's not worth it. But there's a story that you shared in chapter 3 around Autobooks, where you're able to increase sign-up rates by 64%, and like people using this this credit card payment feature that they have increased by 300%. Mm-hmm. What was that insight that helped that? Because I want to start here, because I want to grab people right away and say, hey, this is what you can get if you actually do and follow what's like, the proper way to do, to do customer research, a customer-led approach, like what you suggested in the book, what is that result? And what was that insight that you got that unlocked that growth?
Okay, so lots to talk about here. I got lucky. I got very lucky at the start of this project because Chris Speck, who is one of the co-creators of the Jobs to Be Done framework, was the chief, I don't remember his title, but it was like head of customer acquisition. So he had come in and started this new role at Autobooks, and knowing the value of jobs research, he had already done all these interviews with the team and like handed them to me on a silver platter. So that was a unique scenario. Not a lot of marketing or product leaders come into a situation with all of that like really well-run research ready to go. We can talk more about like what to do in that scenario, but to answer your more immediate question, the insight that we pulled from those interviews was, even though Autobooks is a very so Autobooks is it's like full-fledged or full-featured finance management tool for small businesses, especially like hyper-local or brick-and-mortar businesses. If you do catering from your home, like Autobooks is great for you. Or if you have a pet washing service or a pet sitting service, like any of those like localized businesses are a really good fit for Autobooks. And so when I started working with the team, like the messaging that they were putting out into the world was, we're finance management, like automate all your finances. And that wasn't really resonating. Like it wasn't hitting with SMEs. And so what the research uncovered was the thing that brought people through the door, that really made them get it, was when they sent their first invoice electronically and got a payment electronically. Like they didn't have to go through PayPal. They didn't have to like buy and carry around a Square reader. And when that magic moment happened, new users were like, whoa. And then they became like lifelong users. So that was the insight that then allowed us to look at their marketing assets and realize, okay, we need to really narrow down what we're talking about in all of our marketing. So the marketing message shifted from, finance management to get paid online. I want to say it was like within 2 business days or straight to your bank account, something.
That makes sense. Like, that was the feature that unlocked, people understood right away. They get it. And are like, yes, let's jump on this. And that was uncovered through some of the research that was already done by I believe his name is Chris. Is that right?
Yeah. Shout out Chris. Thank you for working with the project.
I love it. It's great that he's done this research. But you mentioned earlier around like often you would come in to like a company and like, yeah, we talk to our customers all the time. We know what we're doing. And then you listen to some of their recordings. So like, you like this feature? Oh, really? Like this is not really research. In this chapter, you like really talked about like the importance of like actually doing new research. What are some signals to you that you're like, yeah, y'all are not doing you're saying you are, but you're like actually not following, like you're not actually getting the valuable, like the gems from that you can get from customers.
First I should caveat this with like, I would say like with some love to anyone who is running customer research and like trying to figure it out as they go. 'Cause it's fucking hard. Like, it's like no shame to you if you're like, if this sounds familiar, no judgment whatsoever. But there have been multiple occasions where, Gia and I start working with a company and they share their interview recordings with us or their survey data. And some signs that it's not going to give us the gems are things like it's primarily focused on demographics. Like these are the typical job titles, or, most of our customers are in these regions. Like that that oftentimes feels like important information to teams, but a new member of our team, Heidi, who is she's probably even better at jobs interviews than us. She describes that as like being able to understand the demographics of your customer base is great for understanding correlation, but it doesn't give you the causation of why they realized they needed to switch away from whatever they used to be using and find and hire your product. So that's often a red flag. Another common red flag is what you just touched on, which is in interviews, if the team is, even by accident, asking leading questions, then you're going to end up with research that is biased. So yes, the team I'm potentially talking about potentially working with right now, they've done customer interviews. They've spent time on this very important activity, but in these conversations, they're asking customers like, "Hey, what do you think about this feature?" Or like, "Hey, we're considering building X. Like, what are your thoughts?" Which again doesn't go back to what you really need to understand to form a strong growth strategy, which is the causality of, your customer going about their day before they've ever heard of you, realizing they need something new and choosing you. Yeah. I don't know if that was helpful or like way too rambly.
No, this is great. Like, there's no way to rant in the show. Like, the more details, the better you're talking to other marketers. I feel like those are really good ones. You're talking about, I'm a big proponent of I think I tweeted this once, like whenever a marketer says like, "Hey, let's talk about jobs to be done," I get super excited. This is like the one framework that's helped me level up my marketing skills.
AMZs.
For people who are not aware of it, you mentioned already. Yeah, right. People hire products to do something that they're trying to accomplish, a goal or with a pain or something like that. And you're talking about like uncovering those like initial moments. What I'm trying to get at is like, well, how do you, obviously through interviews, but in this chapter, you talked a little bit about surveys and stuff like that. How can people find out that gems that would unlock the growth, like what we heard with Autobooks and other client, like the dozens of clients that you and Gia have worked with?
I love this question. So if you're listening to this and you're like, we don't have time for interviews, or another very common team line of pushback that folks hear and reach out to us for help with is, my team's already done research. And so they're very hesitant to spend more time reaching back out to customers, annoying our customers, if we've already gone through this exercise. And starting with a survey is a much lower level activity to propose. And let's kind of like set the scene here. Let's pretend that I'm or you. Let's pretend you're coming into a company as a brand new head of marketing, and you've looked through what the existing team has already done in terms of research. It's very product focused, UX focused. It doesn't give you that causality gem of why customers choose this product, why they switch away from something else. And if you're getting pushback on, well, we've already done a bunch of interviews, then saying, okay, cool, no worries. Let's start with a survey and see if that can give us the information we need. You're just so much more likely to get an okay. So how we think about surveys is like they are a super condensed little mini jobs to be done interview. And we, in the workbook that goes along with our book, we have a template that lists the exact questions we use when we run these customer surveys. Some of my favorite questions in there are, prior to product, what were you doing before? If you were using any other tools or solutions, what were those? Maybe you were using nothing. And then we leave that field open-ended to see how people describe their past life. Actually, the entire survey is open-ended. I should have clarified that. And then the next question is, okay, so you're using X, or you're not doing anything. What happened that made you realize you needed something different?
Right.
Those are my favorite two questions because they uncover, and since they're open-ended, they're in a customer's own words. They uncover that previous life and that trigger moment, or that causality of what event pushed someone to start looking for someone new. And we've got, I think the survey overall is around like 7 or 8 questions, but those I think are the most powerful for uncovering those like gems you were talking about. When you run them in an open-ended way, you also this sense check of how customers talk about their lives and their problems, and you can then look at your marketing and say, okay, are we matching these words and phrases, or
So good.
are we using internal language that doesn't mirror how customers speak and think?
That's so good. I just want to make sure people who might have skipped over that. Well, those two questions, can you repeat those two questions? The first one and the second one, like that, we really need to focus on.
Absolutely. First question being, before product, name of your product, what were you, okay, hold on. I got to think through the exact wording. The way that we phrase it is, before product, what were you using to like do what product does?
Yeah.
So for Autobooks, let's use Autobooks to be more specific. I would write that question as, before Autobooks, what were you using to send invoices and take payments? And then customers might say nothing, or PayPal, or cash and Microsoft Word. It could be all across the board. And then that second question is, what happened that made you realize your old way wasn't working, or what happened that made you realize you needed something new?
Before I continue, I want to thank the sponsor for this episode, 42 Agency. Now, when you're in scale-up growth mode and you have to hit your KPIs, the pressure is on to deliver demos and signups, and it's a lot to handle. There's demand gen, email sequences, RevOps, and more. And that's where 42 Agency, founded by my good friend Camille Rexton, can help you. They're a strategic partner that's helped B2B SaaS companies like Profitwell, Teamwork, Sprout Social, and HubDoc to build a predictable revenue engine. If you're looking for performance experts and creatives to solve your marketing growth problems today and help you build the foundations for the future, look no further. Visit 42agency.com to talk to a strategist right now to learn how you can build a high-efficiency revenue engine. Thank you also to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs Free Webmaster Tools. Now, if you want to rank your website higher in search engines, you have to make sure that your website doesn't have any technical SEO issues. Because if you do, that's like trying to run a race with your shoes tied together. That's how you lose, and we don't want that. Luckily, Ahrefs Free Webmaster Tools can crawl up to 5,000 pages to find 140 common technical SEO issues that could be holding your site back from generating valuable traffic. It can also help you find your strongest backlinks, as well as analyze keywords you're ranking for and see keyword search volume and ranking difficulty for each of those keywords. You can sign up for free at ahrefs.com/webmastertools or find the link in the description and show notes. Well, let's get back to the episode. There were some responses to Autobooks, like what made you realize that the old way is not good enough. And for Autobooks, it could be like, I lost the cash. like something like that, where like you're really digging into what made them start looking for a solution in that situation.
I lost the cash is a very real one, or the check got lost in the mail.
Wow.
There were a couple of people who were like, PayPal locked down the transfer and I couldn't get my money. Very painful experiences, especially if you're a small business with very low profit margins. Like every payment counts. So a survey can be a really low stakes way to get that information, and not have to spend hours and hours on customer calls, scheduling, blah, blah, blah.
And I believe like there's also, obviously this, you have to have enough customers to survey. In the book, I believe it's 300 or 500. Like if you have enough people you can send a survey to. it would be a good way to start essentially with a survey. That's what I'm hearing.
That's right. Yeah. Numbers wise, the larger your customer base, and yes, in the book, we recommend several hundred paying customers. The larger your customer base, the more valuable surveys are. Also, the more self-serve your product is. So if you're selling into enterprise, surveys probably won't be as useful because there were likely multiple buyers. It may have been a much slower sales process. So surveys work especially well for those high volume, low touch types of offerings and products.
So then we send a survey out. It's 7 to 8 questions. You get 100 responses. How would you categorize and pull out the insights from that? How would you pull out the gem? You've gotten this huge data of words. Do you put it through a word cloud or something else to help you find those valuable insights?
This is such a good question. And getting this down on paper was one of the hardest parts of writing the book. Our process has evolved over time. And our team member, Heidi, is actually right now even leveling up, powering up how we do it as a team at Forget the Funnel. So she uses a tool called Enjoy HQ. I have not used it. But for those who are, interested in speeding up parsing, I would recommend checking it out. The way that we have done it historically is, in our old school days, first couple of years of working together, we would use a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. We have since switched over to Airtable because Airtable's filtering capabilities are stronger. But where we start is that second question. We filter everything by the second question. What was going on that caused you to realize you needed something new? And let's keep using Autobooks as the example. A couple of, one of the themes that comes out is, the cash or check got lost or I was struggling to keep track. Another theme might be, PayPal or Square locked my funds. Another theme might be, I acquired a lifestyle business and their systems were just like shit. That was another real world scenario. One customer had bought a healthy but kind of low level storage business, and she was like, "Y'all are keeping track in a physical notebook? We can move to the cloud, people."
So good.
So we start by finding the common themes in people's answers to that second question. And then that becomes the lens through which we categorize everything else. So we like to group all of the customers we've learned from into the buckets of what their struggle theme was. What are your thoughts there before I keep going?
No, I love it. I start with the pain, and then I guess you're gonna get into that makes sense.
Yeah, we start with the pain because then the pain influences everything else about their decision making. They might be looking for different feature attributes to solve that particular pain. So the pain is really how we start to create segments or groups of customers we learned from. Well, we didn't, in Autobooks' case, we didn't necessarily pick one job to be done above all others. But what it did enable us to do was start crafting different onboarding strategies based on which pain one was experiencing. So, for example, one of the key themes in their struggles was, I just started a new business and I have a lot to figure out. And I just need to get paid quickly.
True.
Very different from someone who has been taking payments through PayPal or Square and had a bad experience. That person's going to be much more gun shy about trusting a new product. And so they have different messaging needs. They have different fears and
Yeah.
They have different willingness to experiment with a new product. So they got very different onboarding sequences when they signed up. That's just one example, but we filter everything by the pain. And from there, normally, Autobooks again was an exception in this case, but normally as a team, then we level set on which pain or, which job someone needs to hire the product for is most advantageous to better serve right now. Not all jobs are created equal. Yeah. Thoughts there? Again, I know I'm talking fast.
No, this is good. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that. Like when you say advantageous, it might not be the biggest pain per se, but like it's a pain that you can serve the best compared to the alternatives, right? Is what I'm hearing there.
There's a what's another good example? You know what? I'll pull another one from the book just for easy reference. We worked with a social media management firm, and they found two pains or two jobs to be done in the customer survey that they ran. One was businesses that hadn't really like figured out their marketing, and they were trying out social media to see if that was a good channel to acquire new customers. And then, and those people, their struggle was like, help me drive more traffic, help me see if social is going to work for me. And then another struggle was really felt by like small businesses that had already verified social was a good way to acquire their best customer. So now they were like, this is working. I need to automate stuff and move on to other business problems. So the team was like, okay, let's think about these two types of people. Someone who knows it works, knows social media works, is going to be more likely to invest in tools to keep social media running. They probably already have a decent content strategy. They're not sitting there wondering like, what should I post? Their business is proven to be a bit more viable if they already have marketing locked down. And so they were like, clearly this is the higher value customer. Like we can better serve these people and they get more value from our product. So then they were able to look around at their marketing and they realized we've been trying to kind of like speak to everyone.
True.
And a lot of our content plays, a lot of our webinars have been focused on that more like newbie customer.
Interesting.
So they were like, oh shit, we need to change who we're talking to.
That's interesting. I love that example. Really like you're finding like who feels the pain the most to put it in some way. Right. And then who can we serve the best with that pain? In the workbook, which I know you have already like been through all this, but in the workbook, there's a rubric to help teams like kind of figure out which struggle or job to be done is most advantageous to focus on. And it's like whose pain feels the most urgent, who has the most willingness to pay, who's least likely to be like a big burden on support, who's a better fit for our business model. Like sometimes, a company has to make a choice between a really tricky problem that serves a higher revenue customer, but that customer is also harder to acquire. They require more handholding, and a self-serve customer that is lower revenue, but way easier to acquire a lot. So sometimes it's like, which can the product best support right now? I feel like there's also sometimes momentum plays at it. Like who can we close the fastest might be an interesting factor for certain companies, especially with what's happening with the economy. Like let's like accelerate our sales cycle essentially, or what's the most valuable could be interesting. So I like how you're helping them think about like who should we focus on now, because like that trade-off is super important. Because like you mentioned, like trying to target everyone, it's like a recipe for failure essentially, and like not resonating with anybody else. But at least people are thinking about it now. I love that you brought up like the economy and like who can we build the most momentum with. I really like that description of it. Last week I was on like an Last week I was on an office hours call with founders within like the Tiny Seed
network. And one founder was facing that exact challenge. He was like, well, we have one customer set that feels one pain. They drive way more revenue, but they're a lot harder to acquire and onboard. And then there's another customer type that has a different struggle, but they get it. They self-serve. It's a lot easier for me to reach them. And so where he landed in the office hours session was focus on creating an experience that acquires a lot more of those self-serve folks. And then once you feel really good about their customer experience, then you can switch gears and be like, all right, now let's focus on this higher LTV customer. But I love that you brought up, like, it's about what we can do now. It's not as if we're going to say no or not, or ignore all these other types of customers forever. But yeah, trying to focus on everyone at once is a fool's errand.
It's so true. I feel like, that's definitely a challenge. Especially, I feel that's might be more so true with founders, where like they think their product is the best, and like I'm not sure. I work with some founders where that's the case. Is that what you're finding? Where like talking to marketers, like, yeah, we get it, like focus, versus like founders, like, no, we got to do everything. We got to do it all.
Yes, and just like improv. Yes, and a big challenge that we see a lot is the product team. They're experts on the product. They know everything it can do. They know how like all around powerful it is. And there's an pretty old by now, but there's a really good Intercom blog post about this. The product team's job is innovation and pushing things forward. And the marketing team's job is meeting the target audience where they're at and trying to bridge the gap between where people's awareness is now and where the product is going. And it's really hard. Like there's a very natural tension between looking at the current market and where the product's going. And that I think is it's one of the things that makes this customer research so valuable. It enables teams, whether product or marketing, to get a sense of where the market really is and how their market really thinks, and then look at their product through that lens rather than looking at it through, their own internal lens where everyone knows that it's fucking awesome.
It's so true. Right. Yeah. I love that. That's a really good point. Like you want to be thinking ahead and seeing what other problems you can potentially solve there. We've been talking a lot about surveys, and I feel like that's a good start. Mm-hmm. When does it make sense to do user interviews or customer research through interviews? Maybe when the team is smaller, when the customer base is smaller, or your early stage, or you mentioned earlier around enterprise. But is there like a point for you that you worked with a company or a team and like, the survey is great. Let's do some interviews, or like, do you find like 99% of the time or 90% of the time the surveys get you good enough insights that you can move forward?
You named a couple of great scenarios where interviews are good. Team is smaller, customer base is smaller, so you've just got fewer people to learn from. Other great times to run interviews are if your product has evolved and does quite a bit more than it used to be able to do. So a good example, there's a company we're working with right now, and they entered the market a couple of years ago with like a point solution, and they are now expanding and they offer so much more. They're like, they've gone from point solution to like all in one platform.
Right.
And exactly as we were just discussing, like the team knows how amazing the product is, but they're in their bubble and they need that like customer input to like bring them back to earth and figure out, okay, how do our customers really talk about all of this functionality? Because we're using terms like seamless, and no one in the interview said the word seamless. Like just as an example.
That's a good example. All in one, seamless, innovative. things like that.
Innovative.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Another one that always bums me out is powerful. Like, what the fuck does powerful mean? Like,
That's so true. What does that mean? Good point.
yeah. So when your product has significantly evolved, that's another good opportunity. A major shift in the market. So like, COVID hitting was a really good time for people to like rethink how they understood their customer base. Or with this more recent, like kind of tech bubble or tech economy downturn, a lot of folks are seeing the people they thought were their best customers churning. So it's another opportunity to be like, okay, who's sticking around and what's so valuable to them that they're sticking around? Like, clearly we got to target more of those people. So a big market change, a big product change, those are both really good times. As well as the ones that you mentioned, smaller customer base, smaller team. One other one is if you're selling into enterprise, that's also probably a scenario where you will need interviews. Surveys are just, they don't go deep enough. They're way better fits in like a lower touch product and like customer experience.
I didn't really touch upon this, but like, seems like depending on your goal, you would be talking to different types of users. So it could be current customers, or it could be new users, or it might even be ones that are on a specific type of product rather than another type. Is that what dictates who you talk to? Is like, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve here? And based on that, like, okay, this you should talk to. This is who we should send the survey to.
There's a couple of criteria that we always lean on. And then, yes, to your point, there's sometimes a little bit of extra criteria depending on your goals. So the criteria we always lean on are, you want to filter down and learn from the customers who are paying. So freemium users or folks in your trial are not a fit right now. We need people who are already voting with their dollars. So that's number one. Recently began paying is also really helpful because, kind of as we just discussed, anyone who converted to paid when the product was very different or the market was very different won't provide the insight you need into what's true right now. So recently began paying and are meaningfully engaged. And that metric of meaningfully engaged, as you well know, because as an onboarding expert, it's different for every product. It doesn't necessarily mean, that they're logging in on a recurring basis. But they're getting value in whatever way your product delivers value on a regular cadence. What's a good example of that? Well, like with Autobooks, actually, logging into Autobooks does not inherently provide value, but sending a minimum number of invoices or even better, receiving a certain number of payments per month is a way better indicator that someone is like bought in on the product. And I'm sure, in your experience, like you can come up with a bunch of really nuanced and much better engagement metrics than like daily actives, monthly actives. So that's three. Recently paying, very and engaged. Those are like the criteria of good fit customers. To your point, then on top of that, you might add people on this pricing tier, or people within this geographic range where we want to expand our reach. But those additional details really depend on the company's goals.
So there's like more focus on your best customers versus like churn users is what I'm hearing. Like churn customers.
Right. It's not that churn research isn't valuable, but in this particular exercise, the goal is to figure out what worked for the best and then reverse engineer their experience to acquire more of those people. What you just said actually reminded me of another great reason or like great trigger moment to do customer research. And Jason Knight, who is a product management consultant, and a very funny podcast host. We were just on his podcast.
Oh yeah, I saw that tweet.
Uh,
He's a good dude.
Yeah. I really liked how he described it in a recent newsletter. He described it as if you're experiencing what he called revenue debt, where you and your team have kind of organically or haphazardly like acquired all the different types of customers who you can convince to get into your product. But now you're like, okay, who do we really serve best? Calling back to something you referenced earlier in the episode, like right now we're trying to appeal to everyone because we'll take anybody's money we can get. And we don't we don't have a clear sense of who to really target. That's another great, reason to do customer research. We just kicked off a project yesterday with a team experiencing that. They serve a ton of different use cases. And so we've deliberately chosen with them not to filter by use case or industry or region, because they're genuinely like, we don't know who you serve best. So they're using the minimal like recently paying, engaged criteria so that we can figure out like, do you have a segment or a use case or an industry who are really valuable to target?
There's an analogy. My mom used to work at a bank way in Philippines, and now she's doing payroll. But like the way that they would check and check counterfeit money is that they would study the real money and check out the security, like what is like the stuff, like what is real looks like, so that they can find the bad, the fake. And I feel like that's an analogy for this, where like if you focus on the best fit, then you can say no to the bad stuff and like point it out right away. And I feel like that's exactly the reason why it works here. It's like focus on the best one. So you, rather than like, churn, new, this, that, just focus on the best, and then you can find out right away if somebody coming in is good or not at all. So
that is such an awesome analogy. Kudos to your mom.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to shift gears and talk a bit about career Powerups, but I'm going to tell people for sure, get the book. Forget the Funnel. It's available on Amazon. Everywhere I'm sure if you Google Forget the Funnel book, it's going to be the top on the list. So please get it. I'm going to link it in the show notes and description. They also have a workbook with it. But let's talk about careers. I know you've been in, you've spent several decades now, over a decade in marketing. You actually looked up your profile, and you done some stints as a music director at a radio station and the marketing director at Callie. I'm curious, like throughout this career you have now that you're written this book, what's helped you accelerate your career or power up your career to move forward? And it could be around marketing, or it could be something more like networking or soft skills that you feel like help you step forward and level up.
Yeah, as you called out, I've had a lot of weird and seemingly disconnected career steps prior to getting into SaaS and marketing, which is a different podcast episode altogether. But what looking back has been really valuable and was definitely a power up. I will get more specific, but to be broad, be a good person. And I say that instead of like networking, because networking can mean all kinds of things. It can mean like trading business cards, and it can mean going to events. I say be a good person instead of networking, because networking can mean going to events you don't want to go to, or trading business cards, or doing like more surface level relationship building activities. Whereas being a good person is being just generous and figuring out how you can help your peers. I mean, you're fucking great at this. Like, you have built such strong relationships and a career out of being a good person and like helping other people get where they're trying to go. And it's worked wonders for you. And looking back, I feel like that was such a difference maker. Um, you know, when the book launched this month, we had so many friends and partners and peers who were willing to, give us a shout out in their newsletter or tweet about us, or like you, do this amazing video review. And that didn't come out of nowhere. That came out of, like you said, like almost a decade of building relationships and being generous in this space. And there's no way that we could have pulled off a launch like that, like in isolation by ourselves. So yeah, don't just be a nice person. Don't be a superficial person. Like, be a kind, good person. And that will pay off in ways you like can't even quantify.
I love how you called out that it's the opposite of networking. I feel like that's, whenever you get into networking events, it's usually like people trying to get something from you. I don't know. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
And like you calling out like, hey, that's, maybe people have different definition of networking, but like you're talking really about like being generous and helpful. And, it might not be at the top of your mind, but it's a small community. And when you help each other out, like it'll come back around in some way, but you're not entirely sure how or where and when. But there's that generosity does come back when you put it out there. It's exactly what I'm hearing from this power up that you have.
Yeah. When I was like a tiny baby freelancer, I did this exercise where I identified other people who had their own businesses, who I admired and I wanted to learn from. I made a little list in a spreadsheet and I found their emails and I reached out to each one and I was like, hey, here's my backstory. I'm going into freelancing. I really look up to you. Could we spend like 20 minutes on a call? I just have some very specific questions about how you got to where you are. No pressure, obviously. And a handful of people were generous enough to grant me that. Shout out to Joel Kletke, who runs Case Study Buddy. Joel.
He's so good. I just chatted with him.
He's such a good guy. Good. He gave me 20 minutes of time when I had no idea what I was doing. And he even took a chance on me and hired me for a small copywriting project. And that meant so much because I had so little on my like freelance resume. And I have to this day, I will sing Joel's praises. I will refer people to Case Study Buddy. His show of generosity just makes me like a forever fan.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And like just making that lasting impact through fan essentially. You don't have to call out names, but has there been other people that you can maybe shout out that's like kind of helped you in your journey? Obviously Gia's one. Joel is another one which I didn't realize because like he's such a good dude.
Oh my God. So many. At that time, I also took what felt like a very scary, expensive plunge. And I enrolled in Joanna Weeb's freelance masterclass. Not because I really needed copywriting skills, but I was like, I want to be like her.
Yeah.
So good. So huge shout out to Joanna, huge shout out to April Dunford for giving advice and helping shape the way that we brought the book into the world. Gia, obviously, Bob Mesta, who I met at at Business of Software, and like that has changed the trajectory. Like so many people have been generous with their time or their advice or their introductions. And all that's made me want to do is turn right around and like do the same thing. Like extend the ladder back down to the next person who's like in their tiny baby freelance career.
That's so good. That's just putting such a big smile on my face. I feel the same way where like the reason why where I'm at is like people taking risks and just saying yes. At the same time, like I've turned around and like helped out other folks and now they're helping out other folks. It's like a circle of help.
Yeah.
So
I want to know who some of your people are. Like who's really helped you. Like
Yeah, I would say like Wes Bush was one of them. Like he's helped like even before we connected. He reached out and supported me writing this book. Um, you and G, like you've been singing my praises, but I actually look up to both of you and be like, hey, one day when I grow up, right? G and Claire, what they're doing for Get Funnel, super cool. Like when I step out finally from the corporate world. Like I love what y'all are doing. I feel like there's other people that Eric who I'm like boss he's my boss now, but we were like friends before that, like kind of gave me some tips. And Andrew Kaplan's another one. I would say we've been like connecting quite a bit, like figuring out like marketing power-ups and other stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my first sponsor for Growth Marketing Today, and then he was the first sponsor for this. And you were going to say
Wow.
something about Camille?
Just what a, like, similarly minded, like generous with his time, like willing to do you a solid.
Yeah.
And whenever someone is in need of his type of services, he's the first person I think of. Obviously, you need to work with 42 agency, like duh.
Before we wrap up, one final question. If you can, and this is another one of those like looking back, if you can give yourself like the younger version of Claire, starting out, maybe she's working at that radio station, what would be a piece of advice that you can send back in time that you can give the younger Claire? It could be, and once again, it could be around marketing, it could be like around other things, but that advice would be something you can send to her to help her with life or career.
This is such a good question. And it's kind of difficult because, like, as you can imagine, if you did your earlier life differently, then you'd end up in a different reality than you're in right now. So it's like,
That's true.
Butterfly effect, like, do I want to change anything? But
Yeah.
If I could, though, I would tell her, keep working really hard, which she did all the time and which I still do. Keep working hard, but like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you are really hard on yourself. Chill out.
Yeah. That's so good. Chill out. And maybe is that when you say chill out, like, you mean like work, don't overwork yourself? Is that what, like maybe you're working 80 hours a week or 70?
I've always, from a very, very young age, I've definitely had this like high achiever personality, which is great in some respects. But also the shadow side of the high achiever personality is like tying your worth.
Yeah.
Let me try that again. Tying your worth to how much you do. Like how successful you are, how good your grades are, how quickly you find a job, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until like much later on that I started to detach my like identity from the work that I was doing. And that was just cause for a lot of unnecessary stress and grief.
I remember Asia Oranjo talking about this.
And
also, she's another one that's like been so generous, but she talked about this quite a bit. I feel like, I wouldn't generalize, but like a lot of like high achieving marketers, you're right. They're like, if I don't hit my KPIs, if this campaign doesn't blow up, or like that thing that, that podcast or that it doesn't like get 1 million views in the first month, then I'm a failure. And I feel like that I struggle with that. I suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm not, like I should quit and just go become a hermit or something like that. I feel like I guess like, like it's something that I've gone to therapy about, and one of my therapists has been like, hey, tie it to something else, like family, or, like being a good person, so to speak. So I feel like that's a really good takeaway there.
Yeah. Big shout out to therapy. +1.
Well, I hope you gained as much insight as I did with my conversation with Claire. I got super real there at the end. I really encourage you to go buy Claire's and Gia's book, Forget the Funnel. You can go to forgetthefunnel.com right now. You can find it everywhere on Amazon. You can also find out more about Claire on LinkedIn and Twitter. All of those links are in the show notes and description. And thank you to Claire for being on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, you'd love the Marketing Powerups newsletter. I share the actionable takeaways and break down the frameworks of world-class marketers. You can go to marketingpowerups.com to subscribe, and you'll instantly unlock the 3 best frameworks that top marketers use to hit their KPIs consistently and wow their colleagues. I want to say thank you to you for listening, and please like and follow Marketing Powerups on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you're feeling extra generous, kindly leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a comment on YouTube. It goes a long way in others finding out about Marketing Powerups. Thanks to Mary Sullivan for creating the artwork and design, and thank you to Faisal Kaigo for editing the intro video. And of course, thank you for listening. That's all for now. Have a powered up day.
Marketing Power-Ups! Until the next episode,